Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Ogre Magi. So Ogre is a 5-position hero, usually a support that plays 5, maybe occasionally 4. There's even some weird meme builds where, he goes like mid or something like that, but it seems like every support hero kind of has this weird mid build. So we're just going to focus on Ogre as a 5 position. So how do you think about Ogre as a 5? Well, you kind of just think of him as his model and his hero represents. He's this bulky, tanky, bruiser, frontliner kind of a hero that's also pretty brainless, pretty mindless, pretty dumb and easy to play. He's probably one of the simplest heroes to play in the game, if not the simplest. And because of that, he can actually be pretty powerful at lower MMRs, but he's almost never picked in pro Dota. He's never really relevant unless there's something weirdly broken about the hero or some weird niche thing that happens for a short time. But he's very rarely picked in higher MMR because he kind of isn't very flashy. But, even my level to lower than that, his abilities can be just very consistent, and he can buff up your carry really well as well. So that's kind of how you have to think about Ogre. A great hero to start playing the game with, a great hero for lower MMR players who are looking to play support. So that's kind of the overall understanding of Ogre, but what does that mean? Well, that means in the early game as a support, you're not looking to be scared and play back. You're looking to run in and beat people with your club. You have high HP, pretty decent damage, high armor, all these kinds of things, and you can just run in and basically 1v2. I've played games before where I've had a 5-position Ogre, I was the carry, and the Ogre solo zoned out the 4-position and the off lane, and even got a solo kill before. That has happened because Ogre can be that strong. He can be very, very strong. And so the same thing goes throughout the entire game. You kind of want to go in, put your body in the front a little bit, tank some spells because you are pretty tanky. It's hard to bring you down, but you also can reliably stun people, do a decent bit of damage with your damage over time spell. Then the other thing that makes this hero actually pretty good later into the game is that he has a buff that you can apply to your mid or carry or offlane or whatever that is an attack speed buff. So it gives you a lot of attack speed. So, giving something like Slark or Jug or really any carry, honestly, Luna, whatever it is, that attack speed can just honestly be the difference in the game because it's such a huge attack speed buff that it really makes your carry almost overpowered in this way. So really all you do later into the game after you hopefully beat up some people in the early game is do the same thing. Run in, cast your stuns, cast your abilities, but then also make sure that your carry and your mid and anyone that wants to right-click is constantly buffed up with this attack speed buff and the movement speed as well. And that's pretty simple. That's pretty much the hero. That's how you play him. That's how you think about him. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Now that you understand that, let's take a look at his abilities. Now that we understand Ogre in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that kind of pretty effective hero that buffs up your carry, but also one of the simplest heroes in the game. So first we're going to take a look at Fire Blast. Pretty simple. You see the cast range there. You just click it on the enemy, and it stuns them. It just does a little bit of damage and stuns them for a period of time. We'll put on free spells there. There we go. We stun the axe. He's stunned. Takes damage. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. That's just the ability. It's honestly not that complicated. The next thing is Ignite. This is another damage spell, but it offers some damage over time and a slow. So let's say we can cast it right there, and it pretty much casts in a pretty decent AoE, but it also casts on a bunch of different things, a bunch of different enemies in that AoE, and then they take damage and they're slowed. So we'll do it again here. We'll cast it on the axe, and we see the axe is slowed a little bit, and he's taking damage over time. Now this, does do a lot of damage, especially tanky axe here at level 10 is taking a good amount of damage. If you have a low HP support you're playing against and you cast Ignite on them, it can actually significantly do damage where they have to run away or they might even die in the fight. Now the same thing can be said is you can actually kind of use this to farm a little bit. You see if you cast it on the creeps there, it kind of hits in an AoE and hits a bunch of those creeps, does a good amount of damage, so can damage them a bunch, and it helps you clear waves if you ever want to, or aggro things, stuff like that, so keep that in mind. Next, we're going to take a look at Bloodlust. So Bloodlust is the buff spell that you put on yourself, or your carry, or your mid, to essentially make them even better, and all it really does is it gives attack speed and movement speed. So you can actually cast it on yourself too. So I double click it here. Now I'm a little bit bigger. My model's a little bigger. I have more attack speed and more movement speed here. So we can see I'm going to be attacking a little bit faster than I otherwise would once this actually runs out. And so what you want to be doing later into the game is just making sure you're honestly casting this off cooldown on your carry, on your mid. Anyone that wants to right-click in the game, just cast this. Even if they don't want to right-click, though, that movement speed can be really, really effective at helping them get in and out of fights and those kinds of things. So we see, I'm just a demonstration here. This is how fast I attack. Once that's done, that's my attack speed. So you can see it can be pretty significant later into the game, especially for carries, and a lot of carries obviously right-click, if not all of them. So that's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. Those are his abilities, and you can see why this might be one of the easiest heroes in the game. You just cast your slow and your damage, you stun people every once in a while, you make sure your team's buffed up, and that's it. Now, I haven't talked about the ult. I haven't even skilled it yet, and you might be asking why. Well, that's because the ult is actually passive, and this also is another reason why it's one of the simplest heroes in the game, because his ult is just a passive. You don't even really have to think about it. And all it does is it basically makes it so that all of your abilities can be cast multiple times. It's called multicast. So you can look at it there, 2, 3, 4 times the cast, those kinds of things with the different levels that it has. And so if we, stun people like here, you see it stunned that dummy target 3 times. And just kind of like a random, it's just RNG, whether or not it stuns more than once, whether it stuns once. It only stunned Axe there once, but if we cast it again, there it's stunned twice, so it'll just randomly happen. The same thing is true with your Ignite. It can cast multiple times. The same thing is true with Bloodlust. You see, I casted it on myself there, but then it also was cast on the creep next to me, so the same thing can happen. You go to cast it on an ally, and it casts it on yourself, or it casts it on 2 allies, or something like that, maybe 3, whatever it is. So it just makes this hero better overall. Basically, he can cast his spell, but then it happens multiple times, either on the same target, or more targets in that AoE. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. You can see why there's nothing too flashy that you can do with this hero, but it does offer a bit of stability. It does offer some, good things if you're lower MMR and everyone isn't, super coordinated, but it might not be the best, at 10k or something like that. Now, that's it. That's Ogre. That's pretty much all he is. I will say that because of this, it does work with like Midas and other things like that. So that's why you can potentially go mid with this hero. You can go Midas. You might even go Midas if you're going a support build, just as like a greedy support. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but you can still do it. Ogre still do it at my level sometimes. But that's why you can go Dagon 5 and all these different things, and you can kill a lot of people from the mid lane. But it's kind of like a meme. It's not really super serious because he's not really that great. But yeah. That's Ogre. Those are his abilities. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, pretty easy to play, pretty simple concepts. Now, let's just jump into a game and see how to play him in a game. Now we're jumping into a game of Dubu playing Ogre here, and I just want to show you this beginning sequence because this is kind of perfect Ogre Magi play for the beginning of the game. You are such a tanky, such a high damage, like high beef hero, basically. Look at this armor. He has 7 armor, 660 health. He also does 52 damage, which is not a lot, but, you can stun people, you can do damage over time. He goes for the Ignite here, level 1, so that slows people and does damage, so he can kind of keep beating on them. And look at him just chase this Coddle around. Usually Coddle, like, pretty high movement speed, decent damage with his blast and those kinds of things. But level 1, he's just being such a bully. He's casting his spell on him. He's body blocking the Coddle to make sure that the creeps get more hits in, all of these kinds of things. And then watch after this happens, after this is done, watch what he does to even the offlane hero here in a second. The Night Stalker, which obviously it is day, and Night Stalker's not the strongest, but look at him just like go 1v2 against these heroes. He just runs at the Night Stalker. The Night Stalker kind of gets a little bit scared because he doesn't want to tank the creeps there. He's just running after heroes. And look at what Coddle's doing too. You think that Coddle isn't doing this for a reason? The Coddle's doing this because the Coddle knows that if they don't do some weird pull shenanigans, if they don't avoid this Ogre and even this Dawnbreaker, they're going to get destroyed in lane because Dawnbreaker is also a really, really strong laner too. So he is just kind of using that level 1 advantage the first minute or two to just chase heroes as much as possible. And in your bracket, I guarantee you the Keeper of the Light and the Night Stalker will not do these shenanigans, and you'll just be able to run up to them and just beat them with your club and just cast your spells on them, and it'll do so much damage. Now, obviously, the rest that you do in the lane, everything else that you do in the lane, is the typical stuff where he tried to deward, he made sure that his small camp spawned, he pulled, all of those things. That's just typical for your 5 position. It's just understanding how to play 5 position. But I want to just emphasize in the beginning here that especially level 1, even maybe at the rune, you want to get extremely aggressive with this hero. Basically just run in, use your HP as a resource, cast your spells on the enemy and hit them because you are tanky. You do a ton of damage and you can be super, super annoying. So look at this. Even though he's still only level 1 and he's against a level 3 Night Stalker, he's still bullying the Night Stalker away from whatever the Night Stalker wants to do. And that's, I think, just a perfect example of how to play Ogre. When you have an Ogre, like I'm a carry player, when I have an Ogre in my lane that doesn't do this, it feels so bad because they're just not utilizing the hero to the best of its ability. But because he's doing this, they get a kill on the Night Stalker because he's just kind of like this huge, beefy, tanky, annoying, you know, bruiser that can just come in there and beat the crap out of you with his club. So that's pretty much how to play Ogre. That's the definition of Ogre, especially in the early game for like the whole laning stage, even into the early middle part of the game. So that's Ogre's laning stage. We can jump to a little bit further in the game. Now, I wanted to show you this little sequence here. We skipped ahead a little bit. Basically, this Ogre is just solo defending top. You know, they could bring a bunch of heroes to kill him, but he's just like almost not worth it because he is hard to bring down, and you know, they're just going to be coming up here just to bring down an Ogre, but he's like solo pushing out the lane and defending the tower. But then look what he does. You know, he's only level 7. He did max out his W, which does a decent amount of damage, which is usually what you do these days. And watch him just like, he knows that the Invoker's here. He just saw the Invoker. He walks up high ground, casts his Ignite, casts his Stun, and then just like walks away. Now let me just pause this right here and go to like free camera for a second. What other support do you know in the game that could just walk blind up high ground to a level 10 Invoker when they're level 7 at 13 minutes in the game and then just cast spells and run away? Like, what other hero do you know of that can do that? I would say no other support hero can really do that in the game. Like, walking up high ground to an Invoker would be super scary as any kind of support. Imagine doing that as like a Lion or a CM. Like, that would just be scary unless you have like your full Lion kit and you can stun him. But as soon as that's done, unless you burst him full to 0 with your finger, like, the Invoker is going to kill you. And then just look what happens as well. Look at this. The Invoker is like burning down and ticking down to the Ignite and just TP's back. Yes, he was low on mana and all those kinds of things. But what other hero do you know in the game that is a 5-position support that at 13 minutes is level 7 and can just walk up high ground blind into an Invoker and then just like force him to TP back? That's crazy because that's just Ogre to you. He has like almost 1200 HP. He's so tanky. He has 11 armor right now this early into the game, and his spells do a decent amount of damage. And so this is just Ogre in a nutshell. I just wanted to show you that little sequence because it's just kind of funny, but also it represents what Ogre is as a giant, like, bruising brawler in that early portion of the game. Now I jumped ahead a little bit here to about 18 minutes, and I just wanted to show you this clip as well because I think this is a very good example of how to play Ogre in like a mid-game team fight when you're still pretty tanky and you can kind of frontline and the enemy doesn't really want to go on you. So look, the Rubik dies instantly, kind of gets caught out of position here, and then watch what he does to keep his heroes safe. Basically, he just runs in, like, just going like ham at the enemy to try to kind of zone them away from his team because he knows that he doesn't want his team to get gone on, right? And so he's puts himself in this like position where he wants the enemy to use spells on him because other than his stun and his like small damage, he honestly is mainly just a tank. So you see how he gets some of his spells off, he gets his stun off, his team is already buffed up with his level 1 Bloodlust, which isn't that big of a deal, and then they're able to turn it around and kill the enemy because they, you know, overextend a little bit because they feel like, okay, both the supports are dead. But he played the fight relatively well in the sense that he sacrificed his body so that his team could do more damage and, you know, be safe there. Because basically what happened is in that beginning of that fight, they killed off the Rubik, right? And then, you know, the Dawnbreaker used the ult. They just didn't have very much in the fight to use. And the enemy Night Stalker popped his ult and started running at people with the silence. So it just didn't look like a very good fight for the Dire team. But you see Dubu runs in with his body, basically just like kamikazes himself, says, okay, if you are going to get to my team, and kill my team, you're going to have to run through me. You're going to have to tank an Ignite, which does a decent amount of damage. You're going to have to get stunned. I'm going to click you, which still does some damage. Like, 87 damage isn't nothing. And he just kind of puts himself there and forces the Invoker and some of the other heroes on the team to basically cast a bunch of spells to kill him. Now, I'm not telling you to run in and feed, but as an Ogre, you do want to be frontlining for your team more than, you know, sitting in the back. You're not a Crystal Maiden. You're not a Rubik. You are a frontlining hero. Think of yourself more as like a Pudge or something else like that. An off-lane hero. Something that just, the whole point of your hero is to get off your stun, get off your abilities, and kind of tank some spells. And so I think that was just a good example of how to do that in the mid-game when you're pretty tanky. Now I jumped ahead to like 23 minutes, and this is just kind of what I want to show you, and it's sort of the same thing as before, but look at how aggressive he's playing on the map as Ogre, because he basically is just saying, I dare you to come and kill me. Now, I wouldn't do this if your team's not around you. He knows they have Aegis. You know, he knows the Mars is there. He is basically just bloodlusting his team as much as possible. Obviously, he didn't max this out. I would say you maybe want to max this out a little bit earlier, maybe not your stun. It just depends. But he's playing around his team, and he's frontlining, putting himself in these positions where he knows that if the enemy chooses to go on him for whatever reason, then he'll just kill them. The team will back him up, and the enemy will kill him. It does take a little bit of team coordination. Like, you shouldn't be playing in front and feeding if your team's not there with you. But if you're pushing, you know, if you have Aegis, if you know that your team is generally, you know, acting as a unit, then you want to be getting in, you want to be frontlining like I said before. And so just like watch what he does for the next, you know, minute or so as they win a team fight here and as they go high ground. He's just casting his spells off cooldown. He's using his Bloodlust whenever he can. And then as they, you know, kill two heroes and they're like, let's just go high ground, we have Aegis, he just puts himself in the front line, casting his abilities as much as possible, sitting in the front, tanking some spells. He even will die here, actually, to the Lion Finger, but, like, that's actually great. That's the thing, is as an Ogre, like, you want the enemy Lion to cast Finger on you, because you know what's happening when he's casting Finger on you? He's not casting it on your carry. He's not casting it on your mid. He's not casting it on anyone else but just a stupid little Ogre that has stun and, like, Bloodlust. And if you already, you know, used some of your spells and Bloodlusted your carry, like, who cares if he uses Finger on you, you know? And that's kind of the mentality that you have to have with Ogre. Just play like a brawler, play like a bruiser, frontline, and those kinds of things. So that is honestly my Ogre Magi guide. That's all you have to think about when playing him. He's a pretty simple hero, pretty straightforward. Now, you do need to be aggressive. You have to learn how to not be scared, but you also have to learn how to, like, not feed. You kind of have to balance that. You want to go in, you want to frontline, you want to tank, you want to use your abilities, but you don't just want to feed off cooldown. You don't just want to, like, respawn and run at them and feed all the time. So it is one of those things that you do have to learn positioning. You do have to, like, play with some caution and with some understanding of the game. And it's a good way to learn that by playing Ogre, but you do need to be very aggressive. And he's a pretty simple, pretty high-impact hero without very much complication. So that's Ogre. I hope you guys enjoyed that guide. I hope it helps you play support. You know, if you're new or something, getting into the support role, Ogre is a great one to choose. As always, guys, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. If you want coaching, the Patreon is below. Or if you just want to support me, obviously go to my Patreon and support me there. If you want me to review one of your replays, I'll be doing that on Twitch on Fridays. You can request that in the comments below or on the Discord. So join the Discord, go to my Twitch. Links are below as well. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.